Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I want to turn now briefly to your concerns regarding the use of restraints on Willow Ward. And at paragraph 293 of your statement, which is at page 62, near the end, you say that you don't know how Sophie was restrained, how many people were involved, how long she might have been restrained for, in what positions. You don't know if the restraints followed the procedures they should have, or how Sophie was supported or calmed after those never pleasant processes. Is that right, that that was a term used during the inquest?
Yes, yes.
And it seems to you that from her records, she was very aware of the impact restraint had on her own therapeutic relationships. Is that right?
Yeah.
And in fact, you refer earlier in your statement to an incident on the 6th of July when Sophie absconded from the Catherine Monk A ward, and she repeatedly said that she did not want certain staff members to hold her down and give her injections because she knew them well and it would break trust. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
You twice quote in this section of your statement the language never pleasant that, is it right, was used by Nurse A during the inquest?
Yes, it was. I can't see that it would ever be described as anything other than that, if I'm totally honest with you.
Yes. Was your impression that the damage done by restraint was being minimised or wasn't appreciated by staff, or that they seemed to recognise the severity of it?
I think it's a combination of those things. I think it was used a lot. They refer themselves, some of the staff members, of a lot of restraints that happened, especially on that day.
Yes.
And at that time that Sophie was there. I can't imagine anybody would ever want to be restrained, and being as ill as she was at that point, and especially if it was male staff restraining her too.
Yes.
That would have scared her and really upset her.
Why do you say male staff in particular?
There's some notes within Sophie's file that she made a report of a rape, and I think it was either 14 or 15 that she was at the time. And she talked quite a lot about the fact that male staff, it took a long time to build those relationships, to trust,
Yes.
to be able to have those conversations. So for her to refuse medication and know that that's what was going to happen,
Yes.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I can't even imagine how scared she would have been.
Yes, and in fact, in terms of the broader picture, you referenced that the CQC noted in its inspection of EPUT wards, again for that period some months after Sophie's admission, but that Willow Ward had the highest level of restraint of any ward across the EPUT estate. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. It seemed to be a very go-to method to deal with patients.
Yes. I want to turn now to your concerns regarding staffing levels on Willow Ward. On the day of Sophie's death, EPUT's evidence at her inquest, is this right, was that the ward was fully staffed?
Yeah.
But is it right, you point to the full number of staff only being reached, firstly, because there was recourse to majority of staff being bank and agency staff, with only 3 permanent members of staff, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think, if I'm right, the staff nurse at the time stepped down to become counted as another member of staff. So she was effectively doing 2 jobs at that time.
Yes, you say the ward manager was acting down at that period of time. And so she should have, as you understand it, have been carrying out a different role and different function.
Yeah.
But she was being used as one of those on the ward like all the others, is that right?
Yeah, so they can't have been fully staffed, because if they were, she wouldn't have been.
And again, in terms of the CQC criticisms that you refer to, in relation to Willow Ward, you point to the inspection report, including in relation to Willow Ward, failures by staff to follow policies and procedures, very high levels of vacancies and sickness among staff, meaning there were not enough nursing and support staff to keep patients safe, the second highest use of unqualified temporary staff across the EPUT estate, low staff compliance with mandatory training, evidence that staff were not completing or updating risk assessments, were not aware of patient risks, and were not always able to identify or respond to changes in risk. And so those are the comments made some months after Sophie's admission. Is it your sense, from the records and from the inquest, that those criticisms reflect also the period of time at which Sophie was on the ward?
Yeah, I think all of them do. In Sophie's inquest, the staff talk a lot about not having training, not being trained, not knowing how to use the tools that they were given on that ward, that the agency staff wouldn't have been familiar with the patients on that ward, that quite often there weren't the handovers that were needed to update new staff shift members about what had happened in that day and changes for some of the patients on that ward. Really important changes in mood, in treatment that had changed, or plans for them to leave, or any of those things.
And from what you've told us, that was exacerbated by errors or issues with the record keeping.
Yeah, there were none.
And is it right, you say, that staff at the inquest were accepting an evidence that they felt stretched thin and that they had less time for therapeutic interventions with patients?
Yeah, they all said that at some point during when they were given their testimony, and they talked about that things were stretched and they didn't have time. And especially the one female member of staff who Sophie tried to talk to, and she said that there just wasn't time. The ward was at such a level, the noise and the situations with patients all through the ward.
Yes. And on the topic of timing, on the afternoon of the 19th of August itself, when Sophie had been observed headbanging, is it right that when questioned about the brevity of time she'd spent with Sophie, the ward manager maintained that it was about quality rather than the length of time spent?
Yeah. When in actual fact, in that situation, it would have been the time spent listening.
And this was a 2-minute period, is that right?
Yeah.
And when asked if she'd put in place any other safeguards for Sophie, like asking other staff to check on her, the ward manager replied that there was no one for me to point out at the time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was it your understanding from that effectively, again, this problem with resourcing and numbers of people meant that action couldn't be carried out?
Yeah, no. There was, I don't see anything through any of the records or any of the information that we've got that at any point was there any time for those situations to happen. Whenever a patient asked to speak to somebody, there was never that time because an alarm had gone off, or there was another incident, or there was somebody that needed to be restrained, which they needed 4 people to do.
And at paragraph 304 of your statement, very much towards the conclusion at page 64, one of the recommendations that you suggest is improving staffing levels of qualified and properly trained staff.
Yeah, you can't, you're setting your staff up to fail. They can't do their job if they're not trained, if they're not given the tools that they need to do that job.
Yes.
If you put a staff member onto a high acuity ward with seriously ill, mentally ill patients, and they don't have a clue what signs they're looking for, how to keep themselves safe, as well as their patients, how are they ever going to be able to do their job? There's no way in the world.
Yes. I want to turn now to your concerns regarding record keeping in particular. You describe Sophie's records as incomplete and perhaps more worryingly inconsistent.
Yeah.
What has the impact of those gaps and errors been to you as you try to find out what happened to Sophie?
It keeps coming back to the lack of care. It just makes it more. It shows me more. It shows the bigger picture is that the absolute lack of care. You don't keep records. Your staff aren't trained. There aren't enough staff. There's no therapeutic side to that ward at all. What actually are you doing? Apart from locking people up, over-medicating them, and leaving them there with no plans, no paperwork, no forward planning of we want to get this patient to this point to reduce medication to help them integrate back into life. There's absolutely nothing.
And in terms of the range of issues with record keeping, you identify errors in recording and seemingly understanding Sophie's status when she was admitted, whether she was sectioned or whether she was an informal patient.
Yeah, nobody knows.
You also highlight inconsistency in the records about whether Sophie was being observed on level 2 or level 3 at points in the records. Is that right?
Which is a big difference.
Yes.
Between a level 2 and a level 3, that's the difference, if I remember right, of how many observations happen within an hour, whether it is a one-to-one, arm's length, all these different things.
Yes, you say level 2 observations is visibly being checked on at least 4 times an hour.
Yeah.
And level 3 is a constant one-to-one observation.
Yeah. So if somebody's not on a level 3 and they're on a level 2, that's a vast difference. You know, level 3 is a one-to-one situation. And if nobody knows, well, the staff clearly don't know, because if they're not told,
yes,
well, you're now with that patient who's on a level 3, how are they going to know that they're supposed to be one-to-one with that patient to keep an eye on them the entire time?
Yes. And on the incredibly important matter of recording ligature incidents, you point to notes of an assessment on the 10th of May, which state that Sophie tried to ligature twice the previous day, but that you have been provided with no records of ligature incidents on that date, on the 9th of May.
No.
And you also point to the failure to complete a Datex incident report when Sophie ligatured with clothing on the 27th of May. Is that right?
Yeah.
And is it right that you are particularly concerned about what is indicated and omitted from the records in relation to the removal and return of items with which Sophie could ligature?
Yeah, because the risk was there. So by returning those items, if there was no paperwork and no notes to say this happened yesterday and the day before, for instance, then that staff member would have known not to return those items.
Yes.
And she wouldn't have had those objects. But if nobody made a note and said this incident happened and it wasn't on file, then nobody knows. It's
Yes.
just chaotic. It's absolute chaos, and nobody knows what they're doing. The staff don't know because they've not been told. The person who's supposed to be telling them doesn't know because they're not sure whether they're acting as a ward manager or they're acting as a staff member on the ground. Nobody knows what medication these patients are supposed to be on, whether they're actually on medication, and there's no paperwork to tell anybody what's going on.
Yes, and on you may want to look at paragraph 47 here, which is on page 12, just to talk specifically about that removal and return of ligature items, because you outline here that on the 3rd of May, Sophie had used a piece of clothing to ligature, and that this incident was particularly serious because it was noted in Sophie's records that she was discoloured in the face by the time that she was found. And you comment that the inadequately completed Datex incident report recorded that Sophie's bed area was stripped from items of clothing in response to this ligature incident. But you say that there is no reference to this happening in other records. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And in fact, 3 days later, if we look at paragraph 49 just below, Sophie is recorded to have tied another ligature on the 6th of May using a black cotton cord. and Sophie's records state that all items deemed to be ligature items were then removed from her room. And you say there, I don't understand why she still had those items after ligaturing on the 3rd of May.
Yeah, I think the pattern forming there, just in such a very short space of time, should have been a massive red flag that things were not good, that she wasn't progressing or whatever they thought she was doing, and that the risk to herself was massive. And yet nothing. There's no reference to it anywhere.
Well, and it seems that the records are somewhat inconsistent,
Yeah.
with some saying items were removed,
Yeah.
and others saying not.
Well, they either were or they weren't.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Because if they weren't removed, then that's how she had them. And if they were removed, then where did that come from?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a contradiction. All the way through, you read another part and you just think, well, let me go back to that. That makes no sense because they said that there, but down there that's just happened. So, yeah.
Well, and on at paragraph 56, you say that on the night of the 12th of May, Sophie ligatured with clothing, and the records state that once again, all ligature items were removed from her room. There is no record of ligature items being returned to Sophie since her last recorded ligature incident on the 7th of May, when they were apparently removed.
Yeah.
So from that, is it right that there was no risk assessment there recorded of a return of items, given that there seems to have been no record of?
Well, there couldn't have been, because if the items had been returned, there would have been done, a risk assessment would have been done, and that would have been followed up.
And then at paragraph 156 of your statement, which we see at page 34, you refer to records from the 26th of July referring to Sophie's property being returned to her following its removal after an incident on the previous shift. And based on the evidence from the healthcare assistant HCA at Sophie's inquest, she said that items returned included clothing, and it is your understanding that this included the item that Sophie would ultimately use to fatally ligature. Is that right?
Yes.
And you point out here that no risk assessment of this decision is recorded in Sophie's medical records.
No.
And is it right that Dr. C agreed in his oral evidence at the inquest that this should have been recorded in nursing notes?
Yeah.
And Nurse B stated in her evidence that they would have completed a property sheet when returning property to a patient, but no such document has ever been found. Is that right?
I think it's the shoulda, coulda, woulda. You know, one says they should have, one says it would have, but it wasn't.
Yes.
So somebody is lying, aren't they?
And turning to the topic of care plans and risk assessments more broadly, you note that the CQC in its inspection of Willow Ward observed repeated issues with care plans and risk assessments being properly updated.
Yeah.
And again, is it right that what you've observed from Sophie's record is failings to meaningfully update care plans and risk assessments? Is that right?
Yeah, because as far as I can gather, interactions with a patient, any instance, should be recorded, signed, dated by any member of staff that has been involved in that incident, had that conversation. It's one of the most important things, to build a picture and show patterns, and surely to help create a safe environment for those patients. Every day is a learning day.
Yes, and if we look at paragraph 141, which is at page 31 of your statement, Sophie's risk assessment was updated to include reference to the ligature attempted on the 18th of July and continued to refer to Sophie as at high risk of suicide and accidental self-harm. But the risk assessment did not include references to the 4 ligature attempts Sophie had made as an inpatient throughout May or at her home on the 23rd of June. And the risk assessment also did not include reference to the fact that shortly before a ligature, Sophie was observed headbanging. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so that reference to headbanging is something which you consider should have been recorded in Sophie's care plan and risk assessments as a risk indicator. Is that right?
Absolutely. There's lots and lots of her behaviour signs that would have told staff that something wasn't right and that she needed closer attention.
And you say that the failure to pick this up and record it as a pattern, is significant because Sophie was then seen headbanging less than 90 minutes before she fatally ligatured.
Absolutely, yeah.
And indeed, the response of staff to the headbanging, which was first heard and then visually observed at 5:16 on the 19th of August, was one of two issues which the coroner at Sophie's inquest said there was sufficient evidence for the jury to decide whether it probably or possibly contributed to Sophie's death. Is that right?
Yeah.
And is this right that Dr. C, in fact, said at the inquest that had he been aware of the episode of headbanging on the 19th of August, he would more than likely have taken the decision to increase Sophie's level of observations at that time, had he been aware?
Yeah. I think the thing is he said that, but he was aware of all of this. All of the other things that happened, the headbanging, before ligaturing and all those things, he was aware of that. And that's the minimal bits of notes that were in the paperwork. And yet he consistently says that she, he's not quite sure whether actually, basically, she's as ill as she's making out to be. So, yeah.
And so effectively, although the evidence that you heard was that he recognised that headbanging was something which was a risk indicator,
yeah.
When one looks at the records that you have,
Mm-hmm.
there is no noting or recording that it was a risk indicator,
No.
such that the staff member dealing with it on that day might have appreciated it.
I think that also comes back to the consistency of staff. If you have staff that work on that ward, in their different shifts, they would know those things because they would know her patterns, they would have seen those things, and they would have talked amongst themselves. But because there is no consistency at all in any way, shape or form regarding this whole ward, whether that is consistency from doctors, staff, anything, recording medications, giving medications, knowing what medications anybody's on, the lack of consistency is why we're now in this situation and we're now sat here.
Yes, and the other issue and decision that the coroner said there was sufficient evidence for the jury to decide whether it probably or possibly contributed to Sophie's death was the decision to downgrade Sophie's observations to level 1 on the 16th of August. And you note in your statement that within Sophie's 15th of August ward review, Sophie continued to have thoughts about the government conspiring against her and to voice her desire to appeal against her detention, to go home and to be left alone. And that shortly after the ward round, Nurse A noted that Sophie presented as angry and impatient, still sharing concerns that the government was after her. And less than an hour after the ward review, a Datex incident report was logged for an altercation between two service users. Is that right?
Yeah.
And the names of those service users are not specified, but because of subsequent notes in her medical records of Sophie hitting a peer, your understanding is that is effectively a note in relation to Sophie and the behaviour she was exhibiting at that time.
Yeah. And again, that just shows her the chaos, because she said, I want to go home, I want to appeal my detention, but I can still hear these voices, these things are all going on.
Yes.
It's chaotic, and she is chaotic in the things that she's saying. On the one hand, she's desperate to leave, but things aren't right and she's ill.
And on the 16th of August, at a multidisciplinary team meeting, a discussion took place, including Dr. C and Nurse A, and it's at that point that Sophie's observations were reduced to level 1, which, as you understand it, is general hourly checks. Is that right?
Yeah.
And the reasons noted by Nurse A on the plan were that the patient presents as more settled and is working towards unescorted leave arrangements.
Yeah.
What is your response or your view in terms of that being the rationale given?
I don't know how you can know this and then downgrade her observations and everything when you've already been told. She told them. She told them all the time. She wasn't backwards in coming forwards to say what was going on and when she was feeling agitated. Visually, you could see.
Yes.
So the conclusion to come to of downgrading her observations to hourly, I can't make any sense of that. I don't understand how they came to that conclusion.
Yes. I want to turn now to your concerns regarding the use of surveillance technology and specifically the Oxyvision system. On the basis of the evidence the inquiry currently has, we understand that Oxyvision was in use at both Basildon Assessment Unit and Willow Ward at the time of Sophie's admission. Is that your understanding?
That's correct, yeah.
Is it right that Sophie was particularly uncomfortable with cameras from a young age?
Yes, she's always been uncomfortable with cameras. She doesn't like her picture being taken. Most pictures, I've got a lovely picture of a child and she absolutely hates it. She never liked it. She just doesn't, she always felt under a microscope with a photograph.
Yes.
Because 9 times out of 10 you don't get a picture of somebody just casually walking past. It's a pose. It's all stand there and let me take your picture. She absolutely hated it.
And you recall in your statement that in earlier wards, she wanted to know whether CCTV cameras were on a ward.
Yeah.
And that was a particular point of focus and concern to her during her early admissions in Southampton.
Yes, yes. She always needed to know where the cameras were, she always asked whether a camera was in her bedroom, where the cameras were in the corridors. And particularly in Southampton, I think if I remember rightly, the cameras were in the communal areas rather than in the corridors, and there definitely weren't any type of surveillance in the bedrooms.
You explain that Sophie's paranoia or psychosis often presented as distressing fear that she was being tracked, followed or spied on by the government or another third party without her consent, and for the purpose of causing harm to her or her family. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you note that an issue identified by the CQC on Willow Ward was failures to obtain patient consent to the use of Oxyvision system in patients' bedrooms. Is that right?
That's correct.
Have you seen any record to indicate that consent was obtained from Sophie for the use of the Oxyvision system in her bedroom at Willow Ward?
Absolutely not.
Have you seen anything to indicate that anyone explained to Sophie what the Oxyvision system is, how it worked, what it does, what it doesn't do, how staff were going to use it?
No, she probably would have asked them. She would have said, what's that? Is that a camera? Is that this, that and the other? But in no way, shape or form have I got any way of knowing whether or not it was explained to her properly. There's no note of that.
And you note records from a 3rd of May ward review at which Sophie told staff that the camera in her room was being monitored by the government. Is that right?
I can absolutely believe that that's what she believed, because having a camera in your room, the level of invasiveness of it is, I'll never understand that. I'll never understand why there would be a camera for any way, shape or form in a bedroom.
And you refer to an entry from the 8th of May in which Sophie told staff that she believed the government had a camera in her room and used flashlights to send her Morse code, telling her to kill people, and that she presented as tearful and agitated and pleaded to leave the ward.
Yeah.
Was it your understanding from these records and your knowledge of Sophie that she was being impacted by the camera system, the Oxyvision system?
Yeah, 100%. I think her paranoia would have been increased 100%, knowing that was there and that people could watch her and that people were watching her and there was a camera there and lights on it and all of those things, and not being able to escape to her bedroom and be left alone, because for her, being left alone included cameras, just being left alone.
Have you seen anything in the records to indicate any reflection that, given these comments that were being made about cameras and the like, in terms of her records and what she's been saying to staff members, have you seen anything to indicate any reflection by Willow Ward staff on the suitability of using the Oxyvision system for Sophie specifically?
Absolutely none. There's nothing to say that the reason they used it was because of this or anything. There's no justification in it anywhere.
Is there anything that you've seen to suggest that when she was making these comments about being watched in cameras, that any explanation was given, as recorded, that Oxyvision was being used and for the following purposes?
No.
I want to turn now to consider the effectiveness of the Oxyvision system at keeping Sophie safe. And you may find it helpful to turn to paragraph 219 of your statement, which is at page 46. And we see here the actions of staff members in the final minutes of Sophie's life. And at paragraph 219, at 5:23:23, less than 2 minutes after staff left Sophie's room, Sophie could be seen on the CCTV footage tying a ligature around her neck. And at 5:29:40, more than 6 minutes later, a bathroom alert was raised on the Oxyvision system for Sophie's bedroom because whilst she had a ligature around her neck, she had managed to move herself to cross the threshold into her bathroom 3 minutes previously. And you say there that you understand that this would have meant that the tile for Sophie's room on the Oxyvision display in the nursing office and on the handheld tablet would have turned red, and that an audible alert should have sounded from both saying OxyHealth alert repeatedly. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And as you understand it, this should have prompted a member of staff to go and to check on Sophie.
Yeah.
But this didn't happen. And is it right that the ward manager gave evidence to Sophie's inquest that although they had 2 tablets on the ward at the time, only one was working?
That's correct.
Was there any suggestion at the inquest that there were spare devices available should one fail or the battery run down?
Absolutely not. There were 2. She said there were 2 on the ward. One was broken, and the other one, I can't even remember where they said the other one was.
If we turn to paragraph 223, just on the next page, you say there that the ward manager told Sophie's inquest that the Oxyvision tablet for the ward should have been with the security nurse, which was HCAC.
Yeah.
However, he denied having the tablet that day and said that it had not been allocated to anyone. The ward manager later acknowledged that the allocation sheet for the tablet had not been completed and said that it may not have been taken because of acuity on the ward, meaning that a staff member may not have been able to hold the tablet. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
What did you understand the ward manager to mean when it was said that because of acuity on the ward, they may not have been able to hold a tablet?
The chaos on the ward, the amount of restraints that were going on. Right outside Sophie's door, just along from her door, was somebody being restrained at the time. And if I remember rightly, the nurse at the time said that that's one of the reasons, or the person who looked into her door and found her, was because he was walking towards that situation. And that's the only reason he saw her.
And so effectively, they weren't the people available to hold the tablet to be focusing on that aspect because there was so much instability on the ward. Is that your understanding?
Yeah. When that staff member called for help because his thingy had run out of battery, and another member of staff ran, the ward manager strolled down the corridor with somebody else. So when they said that there were not enough staff to this, that and the other, well, maybe run instead of stroll.
Yes.
To an emergency situation. Because the other 2 staff members did.
Yes.
That other staff member legged it, and that ward manager had come from that nurse's office where that grab bag was and heard that there was an incident in Sophie's room.
Yes.
And still strolled.
You say at paragraph 225 at the bottom of that page, that Nurse B gave evidence at Sophie's inquest that it would only be possible to hear the Oxyvision alert if you were in the nurse's office at the time, and she could not recall whether she was in that office. She also could not recall whether there was a tablet on the ward at the time, and the ward manager also said that she did not hear the alert sounding.
Yeah, that's correct.
And so, as you've said, at 5:35, an HCA decided to check on Sophie and found her unconscious.
Yeah.
And that was some 6 minutes after the Oxy Health alert was raised.
Yeah.
Just looking at paragraph 229 and 230, probably 299 to 300, which is at page 63, you say there that it was obvious to you that Sophie was distressed by the presence of the camera in her room. But at the start of paragraph 300, you say that worst of all, the system did not even keep her safe.
It didn't do anything. It's the most ineffective object, the most amount of money ever being wasted on a piece of equipment that does absolutely nothing. Doesn't do anything. Achieves nothing, and may give patients a false sense of that somebody will come if something happens. And unfortunately, my daughter proved the point and died on their floor. So their system doesn't work. So maybe stop wasting money on a useless piece of equipment, spend the money training your staff, paying your staff a decent wage, and do your job. Just do your job.
Yes, and on the point about false sense of security, at paragraph 300, you specifically say that you question whether in her final moments, Sophie tried to cross the threshold to the bathroom in order to trigger a staff response.
Yeah.
And that if she did, that confidence was devastatingly misjudged. No one responded to the alert, no one heard it.
Yeah.
And was that in reference to an earlier incident on the 18th of July, in which you understand that Sophie attempted to ligature in her bathroom, with staff then intervening?
Yeah.
And although Sophie may not have known how the Oxyvision system worked, and may not have felt safe with the cameras, you expressed there that you were afraid she might have had a false sense of security that in some way someone would come if she was in her bathroom.
Because in a mental health ward that's at the level of acuity that Willow Ward was, is you're there to be kept safe. All of those patients know that. They know that they're there to be kept safe from themselves or towards anybody else. They know that it's a locked door situation on that ward, that there are staff everywhere, that there are cameras everywhere, that there are alarms on doors. So crawling towards that door, she knew that alarm would go off, and they didn't come. Not for 6 minutes. And my biggest fear...
Yes. Take as long as you need.
was that she was led on that floor, listening to staff outside, and nobody came.
Yes.
The only saving thing is at her inquest, that doctor said that she would have been gone by about 1.5 minutes. And that's the only thing that I hold to, that she wasn't left there listening to staff and knowing that they didn't come. And when they did, they didn't even do the basic resuscitation. They didn't even get that right.
Yes.
Out of everything.
Are you okay to continue? Would you like to take a break?
No.
You sure? particular issue that you've identified in terms of the effectiveness of Oxyvision is a lack of staff training. And you explain that HCAC, who was the security nurse, said that staff, including himself, had not been properly trained in how to use the system. Is that right?
That's correct. And the ward manager described her training method as cascading that information to her staff. I don't know on what planet cascading such important information to your staff members, especially on a ward of high acuity, acuity is the word she used over and over again.
Yes.
So mandatory training on that level of people that are so desperately poorly, so ill,
Yes.
and so vulnerable, and you don't even train your staff in CPR within a hospital.
And is it right that when preparing for the inquest, no records of competency for using Oxyvision could be found by EPUT
No.
for any of the staff on Willow Ward?
None. Not one of them.
And that was a record that you'd understood was supposed to be provided
Yeah.
for staff before they used Oxyvision,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah. We were told that they were fully trained in Oxyvision, and I wrongly assumed in the basics of first aid. As a staff member working in a care place of any type, it seems like common sense.
Apologies.
No, that's fine, you go.
You say at paragraph 301, you express a wider concern about the use of Oxyvision, about that system, to substitute rather than complement therapeutic care and in-person checks.
The system in itself, they can access live video footage of any of those patients on that tablet from anywhere on that ward. Whether they want to look at somebody in room 6, room 2, they can do that. And when all you hear is the level of acuity of that ward, the level of restraints and everything else that goes on, there is no way in the world that those staff wouldn't use that. A staff member would not use that in that way, because they can watch multiple patients on one tablet.
So would it be right to say that this is a particular concern to you against a backdrop of staffing and financial pressures?
Absolutely. The biggest problem I have with it is it's not fit for purpose. It doesn't even do the job that it was made to do. It's supposed to take vitals. Well, you need to be lead still with at least 2 to 4 inches of skin showing. Can't have a blanket over you. There's somewhere about tattoos, scarring tissue. My daughter was covered head to toe in scars.
Yeah.
So, and you couldn't not see that on her. It was there for all to see.
Yes.
So you need to lay still, no blankets over you. I need to see 4 inches or so of skin to get a clear reading. My experience of just my daughter with her mental health illness, at night time, my daughter was nocturnal because it was her worst time of the day.
Yeah.
So she would be up, she would be on her phone, or she would be reading or watching telly or whatever. She would sleep in the day. Why would you use a piece of equipment that doesn't work, that can't read those vitals properly? And it's proven their own graphs, the blue diamonds and the bit of this and a bit of that, it doesn't work. It's not fit for purpose. It's worse than chocolate fireguard. It doesn't do anything apart from cost a fortune and invade and make people who are already so vulnerable more paranoid, exacerbate their symptoms, and create nowhere for them to be that is private, that they can take 5 minutes when they're at their worst.
And Another point you make in your statement is that following Sophie's death, is it right that although police who attended the ward were advised that there was, CCTV was the term wrongly used,
Yeah.
but that there was footage available of Sophie's room,
Yeah.
which you understand to have been a reference to the Oxyvision footage,
Yes.
but that this footage was never provided to the police, and you learnt in the course of Sophie's inquest that it was never retained by the trust, apparently because the ward manager responsible for requesting this had emailed the wrong team with her request, and no one followed that up and directed her to the correct team, so the opportunity for that clear, non-pixelated footage was lost. Is that right?
The police officer, in his statement, clearly stated, I asked for all footage. All. You can't be any clearer than that. All footage. Sophie died in her bedroom. Therefore, if there is a camera in this room, I want all footage. He was very clear. It's very clear on his statement. He's got no reason to lie. And they didn't give it. Why would you not? Why would you not give that footage to a family whose child died on your floor, and that footage could answer questions? I already know the facts because I've seen the footage of the CCTV from the corridor. I've watched my child die. And what other reason could you for not? What reason can you give for not giving that footage when requested over and over and over again? No, we don't have it. It gets deleted after 24 hours. And I now know that there's something along 72 hours at one point, and that footage is retained for 2 years. It's the pixelated one, and that's okay. But it's still footage, and it's still my footage of my daughter's death.
And so you're talking here about the blurred footage, the pixelated footage from the bedroom,
Yeah.
which is retained, as you understand it, for somewhere between 3 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
When did you become aware that there was this other footage that could have been available?
About a week ago.
And was that as a consequence of hearing the evidence
Yes.
in these hearings?
And watching the footage. Yeah.
And so for the duration of the inquest proceedings, which we'll come on to briefly, your understanding was that the footage, the only footage of your daughter, had been written over
Yeah.
because the request hadn't been put in within the 24 hours. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah. That it was only held for 24 hours and that was gone. The fact that the person who was asked to retain it emailed the wrong people. Now, I don't know, but if I had a building, a hospital, and a patient died, I'd want everything. I'd want every tiny bit of information to build a case and build that picture of accurate evidence. And yet, EPUT's attitude through the entire Sophie's inquest, through every step of the way, is to try and hide evidence, lose evidence, not give evidence, delay, give statements 2 days before the inquest. Why? If you have nothing to hide and you did everything correct, why are you playing games?
And so we'll come on in a moment to your experience of dealing with EPUT and the investigations that followed Sophie's death. Before we do that, you make a recommendation at paragraph 304 where you suggest, I think it may come up on the screen, that removing you suggest that systems like Oxyvision should be removed from patient bedrooms.
Yeah,
Is that
100%. It's not fit for purpose. It actually takes away human interaction. They're most vulnerable. They need those conversations. They need that human, are you okay? Do you need anything? We all need that. And at this point where somebody is so poorly that they are physically locked within a ward and held against their will, why would you use anything that would take away human contact and interactions. You're trying to replace staff with cameras. And as we can see from Sophie's death, it was staff that went eventually. The camera didn't. You cannot replace staff in that situation with technology. It's not fit for purpose.
Yes. I want to talk now to you finally about what happened following Sophie's death. You explain in your statement that after Sophie died, Sophie's father, who was her next of kin, received a call from Willow Ward at around 6:15 that day. Is that right?
That's correct.
And he was told by a nurse, "We have lost Sophie."
That's correct. At which he replied, has she, because of Sophie's illness and knowing that if somebody said ever to us, "We've lost Sophie," that was, she's legged it, or we can't find her in the hospital, or something like that. The word lost to him meant she's absconded. Has she absconded? What do you mean? At which point she then said, Sophie has died. There was no introduction of who she was, introduction of who she was representing, what she was from the hospital, any of those things. Just, we've lost Sophie. And he had to then put the phone down to process what she'd just said. Yes. And then spent an hour and a half trying to gather information.
Take your time.
Before he had to then knock on my door and tell me that our child was dead. He had no information. And it was only pure luck that he had a friend who called Essex Police and found information in adult services and found out where Sophie actually was. And part of her first phone call was, "Can you be here in 10 minutes?" The fact that we live, I don't even know how many hours, it's at least 3 away from where Sophie was just bizarre. And I think pretty much everybody knows that when you're using language to tell somebody that a loved one has died, you have to use the word died. You can't say lost, or they fell asleep, or they wandered off. You have to be specific.
Yeah.
And as a medical professional, that should have been very clear. We've since learned that she actually never have made that phone call. It should have been police officers who knocked on Sophie's dad's door and informed him formally, yes, with all the information of what had happened. We didn't have that. From the time that he got that phone call, he knocked on my door at about 8:30 in the evening. So he'd carried that for 2 hours, trying to get information and find out exactly what had happened. I can't even imagine getting that phone call, because I didn't,
yes,
and he did. And because of how it was handled, he had to sit for 2 hours in a car trying to find out where our child was, knowing that she'd died, but not knowing the details and not knowing anything.
And is it right that within a couple of days of Sophie's death, you tried yourself to get information for the coroner's court because you took over contact?
I did.
Because he was really struggling.
Yeah.
And you say that neither you nor Sophie's dad were given any information, guidance or support from EPUT after Sophie died, is that
Nothing.
Right?
No contact in any way, shape or form. I made a phone call about Sophie's belongings to what I think was the hospital. And the first phone call I made to the lady, she was lovely, and she said, I'll try and find out as much information as possible.
Yes.
By the time the second phone call happened, she was very abrupt with me. She did not want to talk to me. And I was basically told that she had no information.
And this is the same person who'd been
Yeah.
lovely with you on the first call?
Yeah.
And is it right that at some point you found a suicide bereavement support group who recommended that you contact the charity inquest. And through that, you learnt more about the procedures that were due to take place.
Yeah. I don't know what we'd have done without them. I can't even imagine trying to go through any of it without the support of them and the signposting to where to get help, even groups for my youngest child, so that she's supported, and making sure everybody was all right. They didn't know me in any way, shape or form, and yet they did more in a very short phone call than EPUT have done then or since.
And did you receive any guidance or support from the coroner's office?
Not from the... No, I don't think I did. I think we had the basics, and the only information that I then got was when Sophie would be hopefully brought back down home to the funeral directors. And actually they gave me more information than the coroners when I phoned them and spoke to them, and they were aware, their colleagues had phoned and made them aware that they would be receiving Sophie or going to collect
That's
her.
the funeral director?
Yes. And actually they gave me information of the time span, how long it would take, the process and all those sorts of things.
And you've described briefly speaking to EPUT's patient advice and liaison service. Is that where you had the conversation initially with somebody who was friendly and
I informed her of the situation, and I said to her that my daughter has passed away on... I don't know if I knew it was Willow Ward at that point. I don't think... I can't actually remember. But I informed her of the situation, and I just wanted to know where Sophie's belongings were. And she was very helpful to start with. I will find out, I will, and I said, I can call you back, which I think is what I did. I can't really remember the order of it. And when I phoned back, she was very unhelpful and didn't want to have a conversation with me. Why, I don't know. I assume that the ripple effect had gone down and people then knew exactly what was going on and who, when I said my daughter's name, I was referring to.
And did you ever get all of Sophie's belongings back?
We received Sophie's personal belongings, everything that was left on the ward, in a very tatty cardboard box that had been used before. And it was at...
Take as long as you need.
We got some of her things back, and there were certain things that were missing, which was her purse, her handbag, and her bank cards. And at that time, we kind of assumed that Sophie's bank card was probably in the back of her phone, and the police had taken her phone, and I understood that had been told to me immediately, that her phone would be taken because it was at the scene. And we got this box, which, if I'm honest, you wouldn't put rubbish in. Tatty box, and it had her laptop and some other of her belongings. And there was still no bank card or no purse or any form of a purse. And I spoke to my team, and they asked repeatedly, and we asked over and over and over again, can you let us know where this is? And I spoke to the police officer and I said, do you have it? And he said, no, we wouldn't have taken that from the scene. And looked through this box, and it was only when I was talking to our team the other day, and we were talking about this box and how bad it was and how grotty it was, and that why would you put someone's last belongings when they've passed away in it? And I went upstairs to find the box, and down the side of one of the sides of the cardboard was Sophie's bank card. And I'd looked in that box so many times, and I'd never found it. And it was part of her, and I wanted it back in whatever shape. And I found it in the box, and it had just been thrown in there and gone down the side of the cardboard. And such a simple thing, when that person put her things in that box, if they'd just done a list of what was in there,
yes,
and showed some kindness even a clean box, even a non-used box. But their lack of care on that told me everything I ever needed to know about them. In her care and anybody's care, if you can't even find or buy a new box. And my thought was, do you lose lots of patients? Is it a common thing that happens?
Yes.
Is that why you're so careless? Because if it was unusual, surely somebody, if I was one of those staff members, I would make so sure that I contacted that family and said, do you want me to send it? Do you want to collect it? And I would have made sure that it was packed beautifully and that those things were packaged and that that family, when they opened that box, knew that their child or their loved one was cared for and that there was feeling and care put into it.
Yes.
And there was none.
And I want to turn briefly to the patient safety incident investigation, which I understand that you were not aware of or involved with until you became aware of it at the first preliminary hearing of the inquest. Is that right? And that neither you nor Sophie's father had received any contact regarding the investigation before that point?
No.
And that rather than being involved in the process, you describe a delay in providing the report, unanswered requests to be involved in the process, and unanswered requests to be provided with a copy of the investigation's terms of reference. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And you refer to receiving a call from EPAT's family liaison officer, who was to be your point of contact, only on the 18th of April of 2023, is that right?
That's correct.
So many months after the investigation is supposed to have started.
Yes.
And on around the 24th of April of 2023, you received the draft report from EPAT. You had never seen the terms of reference or spoken to the investigator at this point, is that right?
That's correct.
And you say you were completely unprepared for the information contained in the report.
Yeah. I went round to my friend's house because I didn't want it in my house around my youngest child. I wanted to go and sit and read it. Sarah is the information gatherer. She's the one who reads it, processes, and then we go back over things. And that's been forever. And when we got that report, I went round and we got a cup of tea and a coffee and we sat and started reading it. And there was no warning and I started to read this page. And until I'd got probably about 3 paragraphs in, I didn't realise that actually it was second by second of my daughter's death and of her dying. There was no warning, there was no email, there was no anything on the front of this to say the level of graphic detail that it goes into.
Yes.
And I'd already started reading it out and I stopped. And Sarah asked me what, and I said, it's second by second of when she died.
Looking back now, how do you feel about the consideration you were given by EPAT in relation to the investigation and the report?
They're a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. You have to talk, whether or not I, as Sophie's mum, wanted to talk to them. That contact should have been made. They should have made an effort to have that contact, whether that is through my team or whatever way, but you do something. You make an effort to contact that person who you had. They had my child. She was in their care. And their lack of contact, their disgusting behaviour shows me that they didn't care when she was alive and they don't care now she's dead. It's an inconvenience to them.
I want to turn now to discuss briefly your experience of Sophie's inquest, which was opened shortly after her death. You set out in your statement that there were 4 pre-inquest review hearings and a 5-day final inquest hearing, and that initially your lawyers applied for but were not given funding for those hearings and for the final hearing. Is that right?
Yeah.
And until the decision was reversed, your lawyers, as you understood it, would not have been funded to attend those hearings.
No.
And you described this position as hugely concerning for you and your family and really unfair.
Yeah. We didn't really know what we would do then if we didn't get that funding and how to go about it. Because funnily enough, there isn't, the information isn't out there. You don't look for it until you're in it. You don't look for support until you're right smack bang in the middle of it, and then you're just kind of treading water trying to find which direction to go in and what to do next.
And you describe the experience of going through that inquest process as gruelling and distressing and an experience that you would not wish on anyone.
Not even on my worst enemy.
What, if anything, do you feel could have been done to make that experience better?
I don't know. The problem is to make it better, you take out the facts. And the facts of Sophie's death and the lead up to that are horrific, traumatic. If you take that out, you don't get the full picture of everything. And I don't know how you could improve it. I think the only thing that I think you could improve is when it comes to a situation like ours where we had a jury. I think explaining how to rule on it needs to be brought down into layman's terms so that the people that are on that jury, I struggle with some of the legal terminology. I have to ask or Google it. 9 times out of 10, Google's my friend when I need to know something, because I've got, before you'd have gone, well, I'll have to wait or look it up in a dictionary or something, but now it's Google and that helps all the time. But when you're sat in that situation, watching and listening to information about somebody else's loved one dying, to try and get into the headspace of the legalities of it and make a decision based on what you've learned, bring the language down and explain it until every single member says, I get it, I know exactly what you want me to do. Because if you don't, what you get is what we got.
And so you're talking here about, at the end of the evidence, the coroner said there was sufficient evidence for the jury to decide whether the following issues probably or possibly contributed to Sophie's death, and identifying the decision to downgrade her observations to level 1 on the 16th of August, and the response to Sophie being found headbanging on the 19th of August.
Yeah.
And the jury were directed to return either a short-form conclusion with a narrative or a narrative conclusion, you say.
Yeah.
But that thereafter, after only a few hours of deliberation, the jury returned a one-word verdict of misadventure. And so there wasn't a detailed narrative conclusion provided.
No.
So you understand it?
The misadventure to me was a good thing, because it meant that she didn't mean to. And that for me says that it was an accidental situation and that could have been prevented. And that to me says, although I do believe that, they could have said more. The thing is not everybody has experienced loving somebody or living with somebody with mental health issues to this level.
Yes.
And when I talk to people and they go, oh, crikey, you know, and then I say that she died within a hospital and they're like that. What do you mean? It's not everybody, and not everybody understands what all of these things mean and surrounding mental health. So for that jury to grasp everything, it was a lot. It was a lot for me, and I knew it.
Yes.
I've lived this with her. So that, I think, more support, more information, ask more questions if you want to. And they did ask questions, really good ones.
Yes.
But for them to be able to make that decision, they need to know all of it and to understand all of it and make sure they understand all of it.
I want to come now, finally, to the recommendations that you set out in your witness statements. And I will ask if you would like to say anything further about them or how they could have impacted on Sophie's care and treatment. It may well be we've covered them sufficiently already, but I want to make sure you've got an opportunity to say everything you'd like to say in respect to these recommendations. I see we already very helpfully have up on screen paragraph 304 of your statement, where you refer to what you describe as discrete issues that you think would make a difference to the care of vulnerable people like Sophie. And you specifically list 2 matters which we've discussed already, so removing systems like Oxyvision from patient bedrooms, improving staffing levels of qualified and properly trained staff. You also point to measures that you say could be recommended that would help families like mine to hold trusts and other bodies to account when things go wrong, like implementing a single, clear, independent oversight body that is accessible, transparent, and publicly accountable. Is there anything further you'd like to say about this particular recommendation?
No, I don't think so. I think that's the independent oversight body. You can't have somebody that's got a vested interest. You have to have that neutral person to be able to see clearly and see everything and not have a bias. If you work for the hospital that you're investigating, how can you not have a bias?
And then if we look at paragraph 305, you explain that you believe the problems run deeper than these individual recommendations. Fundamentally, you are concerned that we as a society, and in particular those responsible for mental health care, have become too complacent and comfortable with the loss of life within that system. Is there anything further you'd like to say about the point you make there?
I think in general that covers it. I think that mental health care, on the whole, chuck drugs at them. And actually, there's an awful lot of people who could be maybe prevented getting to the level that Sophie was at and how ill she was by that therapeutic side, by care, actual care going into mental health.
And finally, on the next page at paragraph 311, you say the main change that I want to see following the conclusion of this inquiry is that people and the mental health system do their jobs. The function of the mental health system should be treating mental ill health, putting patients' well-being and therapeutic treatment at the heart of the system, keeping them safe and supporting them to live fulfilled lives. It is woefully failing at that and too often defending and entrenching those failures where they do occur. Are there any further points or further recommendations that you would like to make at this stage?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Maybe just be honest. That's the only thing I would recommend. Just be honest. If somebody dies and mistakes were made, just be honest. At least give the families that and say, we messed up. We got it so wrong. We're listening. Tell us and change it quick.
Thank you, Tammy. I don't have any further questions for you at this stage. Chair, do you have any questions?
I don't. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Amanda, please can we have the photograph on screen? Tammy, we will now show a photograph of your daughter Sophie. Tammy, we'll now have a 10-minute break to see if there are further questions. If there aren't any, that concludes your evidence and you'll be free to leave. Thank you again for the evidence you've given today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I know it can't have been easy, so I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Griffin.
Affirmation card for you to read. You can remain seated.
Okay.
What now? Shall I do it now? Yeah. I, Joanne Woolley, do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Would you give your full name, please?
Joanne Woolley.
Joe, was your father Norman Noah Dunkley?
Yes.
And from October 2021 until his death in March 2022, was he initially at Whipps Cross Hospital in Leytonstone, London,
Yes.
then in St Margaret's Hospital in Epping,
Yes.
and was he finally taken to Wensley House Residential Home, a private care home in Epping?
Yes.
Joe, did your father die on the 15th of March 2022?
Yes.
And was he 90?
Yes.
You've provided the inquiry with a witness statement. Do you have a copy of it in front of you?
Yes.
Is it 18 pages long?
Yes.
And if you go to the last page,
Yeah.
can we see the date, the 15th of August 2025,
Yes.
and that you've made a statement of truth and then you've signed it?
Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to read through it recently?
Yes.
Is it true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Joe, please feel free to refer to it as you wish.
Okay.
Your statement will stand as part of your evidence to the inquiry, which means I don't need to ask you about everything in it.
Yeah.
Joe, did you also provide a commemorative and impact account about your father that was read in November?
Yes.
May I say this, that we are very grateful for that evidence and indeed for the evidence you're about to give.
Okay.
Before we go any further, are you accompanied today by your husband Fred and your good friend Joe?
Yes.
I'd like to start by asking you about something that you mentioned back in November, the farm.
Yeah.
Now, is that where your parents lived and where you grew up with your
Yes.
sister?
Yes.
Did your father first move to the farm in the late 1960s?
Yes.
And after he met your mother, did he build a bungalow there?
Yeah. We lived in a caravan to start with. Yeah.
But the bungalow became your family home?
Yes.
Where was the farm?
Loughton, Essex.
Thank you.
In fact, was it called Oak Farm?
Oak Farm, yeah.
And was it more than a family home? Did it in fact become a place of business as well?
Yes, yes.
Did your parents, your mum and your dad, continue to live on the farm after you and your sister moved on?
Yes, yeah.
Did the farm remain an important place for them?
Yes, yeah, my dad wouldn't live anywhere else, yeah. He'd been there for 60 years.
Can we move forward now?
Yeah.
And to care that you were to go on to give to your mum and then to your dad.
Yes.
Did you care for your mother at home on the farm after she fell ill and up until she sadly died in 2010?
Yes.
How long was that for? About?
10 or more years.
And did you then become the main carer of your father?
Yes.
Was that still on the farm?
Yeah. I was there every day for For Mum and for Dad, yeah.
And did your sister, at least with your dad, did she help on weekends?
Yes.
So you had experience of looking after both your mother and your father at the farm?
Yeah.
I'm going to move now to a difficult time and ask you, I think it's the summer of 2021, about your father's hallucinations
Right.
and also his potential ill health.
Yeah.
You describe in your statement how your father started to see things.
Yes.
This is paragraph 5. You don't need to follow it if you
No.
don't want to.
No.
Was I right? Was this around summer 2021?
Yes. Yes.
And did that continue up until at least his 90th birthday on the 8th of October 2021?
Yes. Yeah. Do you want me to?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, he started saying that he'd started seeing people up on the farm, which, because it was rural, we sort of believed him because you could get people just walking around. So then he was adamant that there was definitely people up there, mostly of a night. So me and my sister said, well, let's get cameras put up, and then if there's people up here, then we can see who's up here. Well, we put the cameras up. My nephew done that. And then a couple of days after, he said, yeah, they was up here last night. So we said, right, let's go and have a look at the cameras. So, because when we looked at the cameras, we didn't see anyone up there. So this when we realised there was more going on.
Did you get to the stage where you called up the GP?
We called the GP, yes.
And did an on-call doctor come out to see your dad at the farm?
Yes.
Was this before your dad's 90th birthday?
Yes.
Shortly before?
Yeah, a bit before. This is when the on-call doctor came out. Yeah. He said my dad had been sort of like having what they call sundown dementia, where of a night, this is when you can get some hallucinations, and that's what they call sundown dementia. And then he said maybe we needed to get back in touch with the GP and just have a look to see what's going on with Dad a bit further. So that's what we done.
Was it not just hallucinations? Was there a physical health concern as well in relation to your dad?
Yes, yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, he wasn't eating, he wasn't sleeping, and he'd just become different.
You make reference to a concern potentially about bowel cancer.
Yes.
For various reasons, including a bad stomach.
Yeah, he was getting constant upset stomach, so the doctor said, let's get a test done. So we done the test, it come back quite quick, and the doctor did say that there was a good chance that it was bowel cancer, and he said, you know, what would you like to do? Would your dad like to go to hospital? So me and Dad had a discussion, and he said, I want to stay at home. So the doctor said, well, your dad is 90, because my dad's GP knew us very well. He'd looked after Mum and Dad throughout their time with the doctors. And he said, you know, we'll keep Dad at home and just monitor him. He said, your dad is nearly 90, and my dad didn't want to go to hospital and be pulled about with, and he was happy with that, yeah.
And you say this in your statement, Dad did not want to go through the treatment and going in and out of hospital.
Yeah.
He wanted to stay at home.
He did.
The doctor agreed.
Yes.
And told us we could keep him at home and medicate him and just make him comfortable.
Yes.
That's paragraph 7. That's all correct?
Yes.
Was there also a discussion at this time with the GP about palliative care?
No.
Did that come later on?
Yes.
I'm going to return with you later in your evidence about the concern or the wish to keep your dad at home.
Yes.
But I am now going to ask about what must have been a difficult incident shortly after he turned 90, as I understand it. Did you get a call from your dad not long after that birthday?
Yes.
How long after the birthday? Do you remember?
It wasn't long, it was about a couple of weeks.
You say in your statement about a week. Do you know which would be more accurate? Not that much turns on it.
Probably about a week, yeah. Yeah, it probably was.
What did your dad say when he phoned you up?
Well, it was early in the morning. I can remember it. It was a Wednesday because my husband always goes to golf on a Wednesday, and our phone rang, and it was my dad in a state saying they're up here trying to kill me. They're killing me. So I said, "Okay, Dad." Put the phone down, and I said, "We'll come up. Me and Fred will be up." So with that, we jumped in the car. We went up, and as I got out the car, I looked at my dad, and he looked absolutely awful. His eyes was black, he was grey, he'd been sweating. All the doors had been locked, he'd been up all night trying to get out. So I managed to tell him to open the front window, in which he did. I climbed through the window, and then I was with my dad, and he was like all clammy, sweaty. And I said, we need to ring an ambulance. And he was still saying, they're over here, look at the state of the place, it's all blown up. So obviously I just agreed and went along with him. And then with that, we called an ambulance, and the ambulance turned up. By this time, my dad had sort of calmed down, but he's still saying his place was all blown up. And they done some tests.
Well, first of all, did your dad get taken to Whipps Cross Hospital?
Yes, they took him from there, from his home, that morning to Whipps Cross.
So this is the Wednesday morning?
Yes.
And do you know which department at Whipps Cross your dad was
I
taken?
went through A&E.
Can we move then to the time your dad is at Whipps Cross?
Yeah.
Did you go to the hospital too?
Yes.
Were you there, in fact, for some considerable time?
15 hours.
On that Wednesday?
Yes.
What was the initial view of the medical staff at Whipps Cross about your dad?
There wasn't nothing wrong with my dad.
What did they think should happen?
He should go home.
And how did you respond to that?
I said, no. There's something not right with my dad. By this time, he'd been up there. I mean, by this time, it had gone on all day and right into the evening. And they'd done various tests with him. They said to him, "Oh, can you do the months backwards?" And he done that. And they said, "Who's sitting there?" He said, "Well, that's my daughter." So that, as far as they was concerned, that was all that was wrong with my dad. But I said to them, he's not right. There's more going on with my dad. I said, he needs to come in. He needs to stay in. So by this time, that was about 11 o'clock at night. And I said, I can't take him home at this time of night. So 2 doctors looked over at me, and then they came over and said, well, we'll keep him in for tonight. So that's when he stayed in Whipps that night.
And so can we move then to the next day, which would be the Thursday?
That's right, yeah.
You mentioned in your statement that this was the day that he was assessed.
Yes.
Do you know what kind of assessment was conducted on your
I
dad?
don't.
Were you part of that assessment?
No.
Did you get a phone call from
Yes.
someone at Whipps Cross?
Yes, a doctor at Whipps Cross rang me, and they said to me, your dad is iller than what he's presenting. He's got what you call Lewy body dementia.
Let's just get that clear. So that's Lewy, L-E-W-Y,
Yeah.
body dementia.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got Lewy body dementia. He needs to go to St Margaret's for an assessment.
Now, was that an assessment in relation to his dementia, or was that an assessment in relation to mental health or anything else?
His mental health because of all what he was saying. Because he was still telling them that he'd seen people and all his place had been blown up, and yeah.
Can we just, this is what you say at paragraph 15, before we move away from Whipps Cross. You say this: I do not know what the assessment involved.
No.
Looking back, it makes me realise how little we were told.
Yes.
No one told us if it was a specific assessment or routine or anything about it. I was his main carer and next of kin, and no one sought any information from me about his symptoms or the lead up to his admission.
That's
Is that
right.
all correct?
That's all correct. Because I'd just like to add, Nick, by this time, I was mentally drained, and obviously I was just so worried about my dad. I knew things wasn't right. The place where he lived, he was rural, it just all took off very quickly.
So the decision is that he needs to go to St Margaret's for another assessment.
Yes.
And that then takes us... but before we actually go to St Margaret's, can we just stay with Lewy body dementia?
Yeah.
So you hear this probably for the first time.
Yes.
Do you know what that diagnosis was based on? For example, had he gone through a scan or anything of that
No.
nature? Was any treatment discussed with you for the dementia?
No.
And in fact, as we'll hear, did your dad then receive a diagnosis of a different kind of dementia when he went to St Margaret's?
Yes.
And I know that diagnosis and assessment is an issue that you're going to want to return to when it comes to your recommendations. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You say later in your statement, it's paragraph 18, at the time, I felt Whipps Cross had done things right, but now I do not. My dad was not there very long, but in that time, they did not listen to or speak to us, and I do not think he was assessed properly.
Correct.
What do you think was wrong with the assessment?
Well, I should have been called up there. Well, me and my sister should have been asked to go up there and sit with the doctor that diagnosed him. Then we could have told him what had gone on with my dad, and we could have discussed it together. Like I'd always discussed everything regarding his health and my mum's health with the doctors.
And in fact, is it a theme that when your mum was ill, there was generally quite good communication between you and medical staff?
Definitely.
And is that contrasted really with your experience with your dad?
Yes. I mean, I helped my mum with palliative care at home.
I'm going to move now to St Margaret's because your dad is taken there. Before I do, we will deal with your recommendations later on, but is there anything else before I move on that you would like to mention about Whipps Cross and your dad's time there?
No.
Thank you. So your dad goes to St Margaret's where he's an inpatient, correct?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that he was on a mental health inpatient ward?
Yes.
You say in your statement that he went to Whipps Cross on a Wednesday, and by the Saturday he was in St Margaret's. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
How long did he stay at St Margaret's for, about?
5 months, I think it was, in total.
In fact, did this time coincide with the COVID pandemic?
Yes.
Did that make, for periods of time anyway, visiting him quite difficult?
Yes.
But were you actually able, outside those restrictions, to go and visit him?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to move on now, because you mentioned in your statement, about 3 weeks into the stay at St Margaret's, you received a call from an occupational therapist.
Yes.
This is from paragraph 16.
Yeah.
There's no need to name her, but that's correct, is it?
That's
you did
right,
receive
yeah.
that. Had she spoken to your dad?
Yes.
Did she say that your father was going to be assessed at St Margaret's?
Yeah.
Did you know what kind of assessment she was referring to?
No, because we'd never gone into this before. We were sort of like thrown into it, really. Yeah.
Do you remember what else she raised with you, as well as that he was going to be assessed?
Yeah, she said, you know, so have you thought about him going in a care home? And then she answered her own questions. She said, oh, I suppose you haven't really, because, you know, he hasn't been in here that long, and, you know, I'd always care. I wanted to keep him at home, and he wanted to stay at home. So we'd never contemplated going in a care home.
What did you think when she raised the possibility of your father going into a care home?
Well, shocked. Yeah.
Did she ask you to provide information to inform the decision whether or not your dad should go into a care home?
No.
If she'd asked, what kind of information would you have been able to provide?
Well, I could have told her that obviously what my dad's needs was, and that he only wanted to be at home.
Could we move then to a further phone call you had? I think this time with a doctor, from a doctor.
Yeah.
You explain in your statement, it's paragraph 17, that one Monday a doctor called you, and later in your statement you say that this was just before Christmas 2021. Again, does that sound about right? Let's refer to him as the doctor.
Yeah.
What did the doctor say about your father during the call?
Yeah, he said, hello, this is Doctor, his name,
Yeah.
and said, your dad's got vascular dementia and he needs to go in a care home.
So let's break that down. At Whipps Cross,
Yes,
it is Dewey body
It was
dementia.
Lewy body dementia.
Lewy body dementia.
yeah,
Here, still dementia, but vascular.
vascular dementia.
So two different
Yeah,
dementia
Yes.
diagnoses.
but out of the two, Lewy body is a worse, well, if there's any type of worse, dementia, but Lewy body is harder to diagnose and is more worse than vascular.
You say in your statement that the vascular dementia diagnosis was based on a scan.
Yes.
Is that your recollection?
Yes,
Did you then arrange a meeting
yes,
so that you could actually go and talk face to face
Yes.
with the doctor and other people?
yes,
In fact, was that as a result of speaking to your family friend Paul?
yeah, yeah.
Was this, so you talk about the call from the doctor being just before Christmas 2021.
Yeah,
Did the meeting take place also before Christmas?
yes,
I'm going to ask that we look at something on the screens, what you said about the meeting in your statement.
Yeah.
Could you put up UREP 009924, that's the statement at page 12, and expand paragraph 66, please. So let's look at this. Just before Christmas 2021, a doctor called and told us my dad had vascular dementia and that he needed to go to a care home. That's what you've just told us, isn't it?
yeah,
Paul, our family friend, said we need to have a meeting with them, which we did. The doctor, the senior nurse, and a care assistant were there.
yes.
They were supposed, so those are the others who were present.
That's right.
Were you there on your own, or were you with the members of your family?
There was me and Paul.
You and Paul. They were supposed to be telling us how my dad was doing, but they could not tell us much about him.
Yes,
They said they had assessed his needs, but again, they could not tell us much about what they were.
yeah,
We said we were concerned he was not receiving the correct care as he was becoming very insular. I asked about palliative care, but was dismissed.
yes.
You talk there about your father becoming very insular. What had you noticed?
Well, he was just sort of like, wasn't talking, he just wasn't himself. On the visits that me and my sister did have, he just wasn't himself. He didn't want to be there. He would have hated it in there.
And what was the purpose of asking about palliative care?
Because his own GP, we'd had the, about his bowels.
Yes.
And
so the
he'd-
concern that he had
we
bowel
had concern
cancer.
about bowel cancer, yes. And I knew what my dad's needs was. I knew how he relied on me, so I knew exactly what he could cope with and what he couldn't. And, his own GP had aired on the side, well, your dad's getting more frailer now and he needs, just to be kept comfortable. But the doctor said he dismissed it. He said there's nothing wrong with him. He's physically fit.
You used the word "but was dismissed." We can see that in the end
Yes.
of the paragraph. Is that how you felt?
Yes. He said he's not at that stage yet. He said he's not palliative care.
Did you
And-
feel there was any interest in the information that you were able to provide?
No. Can I just, as prior to my dad, once my dad had got in there, because normally when you get family going into hospitals, they normally like you to go up and, relay what had gone on. So I did. I happened to speak to one of the doctors up there, like one of the understudies, but he wasn't really interested in what I had to say. I wanted to tell him what had led up to my dad coming in here and how he was. And he just said, well, we make our own assessments.
Even though you knew your dad very
Yeah.
well and had cared for him.
Yeah, not interested.
Could you take that down, please?
And did you make plain to him his suggestion of going into a home was not something you were prepared or wanted to happen?
Yeah,
You did say that.
yeah.
Do you know if anyone at St Margaret's, we've heard what you've said about their interest or lack of interest in what you might be able to tell them. Do you know if anyone at St Margaret's reached out to your dad's GP to ask for information or views
No.
from that person?
No.
Is that you don't know or they did not?
I don't know. No.
You've referred to the vascular dementia diagnosis.
Yeah.
Did you try to discuss that diagnosis with the doctor?
Yeah.
And what happened when you tried to discuss that with the doctor?
Well, when we went up for that meeting, they said that my dad would have had a scan and that to show whether he's got vascular dementia. But all they was really interested in is putting my dad in a care home.
And what happened when you mentioned Lewy body's dementia?
He dismissed it. He sort of like went, well, maybe. And, because I said that when me and my sister was coming up to visit my dad was sitting there hallucinating, and they wasn't aware of that.
So the hallucinations had actually continued after
Yes.
he was on at St Margaret's?
Yes.
Was any treatment or management of for his dementia discussed with you or your sister?
No.
I'm going to come on now to another point of contact you had when your father was at St Margaret's, please. You say at paragraph 19 of your statement, the social worker
Yes.
at St Margaret's and the doctor conducted an assessment around December 2021.
Yeah.
After which they concluded that my dad should be in a care home.
Yeah.
The social worker did her assessment after Christmas. My sister, my friend Paul, and I then had a meeting with her to discuss my dad's needs. And as we'll hear, he wasn't moved for some considerable time after that until the 7th of March 2022.
Yeah.
So can we just be clear? There's the meeting, the in-person meeting with the doctor before Christmas.
That's right.
Then there's a separate meeting in person with the social
Yes.
worker. Do you know what kind, you were talking about an assessment there. Was this a separate assessment that the social worker was conducting? Was it the same as the one the doctor was talking about, or is it unclear to you?
Well, she was trying to. I think she was trying to assess what my dad's needs was. But I could tell her, we could tell her what my dad's needs was. But again, it was all about a care home. So that's all as far as we got.
Can we have another look at your statement, please?
Yeah.
Could we put up, please, page 8 of the statement at UREP 009924? So this is page 8, and expand paragraphs 36 to 40. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to read this, Jo, and then we can come back to bits of it.
Yeah.
Care management and plans. When we went up to see my dad after Christmas, there were conversations with the social worker about his needs. There was no mention of any care plan, and we still have not seen one. Is that still the case?
Yeah.
We were never aware that there was one. If there was, we were never approached, and our views were not considered, correct?
Yeah.
You go on to say this. The social worker said she'd spoken to my dad, and he was quite switched on
Yeah.
and could manage himself well. But this was at odds with what we knew of him. I do not know if she ever asked him where he wanted to be, but we know if she did, he would have said at home with us. Now, the social worker was saying he was quite switched on and could manage himself well. You say this was at odds with what we knew. How did you find him at this time?
Well, he wasn't responding. He hated it in there, so he wasn't speaking to anybody. Since recently, I have received his notes, which obviously it was quite difficult to read. And when I've looked at how they assessed him, like with the nurses, every day when they've assessed him, he's sitting asleep in a chair.
Which might make an assessment difficult.
Yeah.
You say at paragraph 38, they told me that they were going to tell him he was going into a care home, which I objected to.
Yes.
I said, we are going to tell him.
Yes.
They never talked about asking what my dad wanted, only telling him what was happening. So what was your concern about a member of staff telling your dad that he was going to a care home?
Trying to protect him. Because I'd done everything for him. I couldn't bear the thought of someone telling him he's going into a care home, which he never would have wanted. So I thought it's better coming from me and my sister that we was going to now have to put him in a care home.
Paragraph 39, you say, I was involved at the planning meeting in December 2021. where I felt like I was railroaded. Overall, we were never asked our opinion, and when I shared my views about palliative care in the meeting, I was told I was mad. When you say railroaded, what did you mean?
Dismissed. What was it to that doctor to let my dad home with proper palliative care? That's what I can't understand.
Well, we'll come on to that
Yeah.
point in a little bit more detail, if we may.
Yeah,
You say you were told you were mad.
yeah.
How did you feel?
Well, by this time, you know, I'd been dealing with my dad at home. I'd been run ragged, and I really was finding it tough. And I just felt so demoralised by the way I was being treated by that hospital that, you know, I know my dad and I know what he would have wanted, and disrespected that, yeah.
You say in paragraph 40, in the December meeting, they were leaning towards nursing,
Yeah.
but when we had a meeting in the new year, it was just care, according to the social workers' care plan. I did not realise that nursing homes, in fact, do both types of care. No one explained the difference. So are you talking here about a care home and a nursing home and the difference between the two? And understandably, you weren't aware of that at the time.
No.
You are now.
Yes.
It says there's a reference here to the social workers' care plan. What did you mean by that? The words care plan there in connection with the social.
Well, to see what sort of home he would have gone into.
But we've used the word care plan before, as in
Yeah.
there was no care plan.
Yeah.
Is this something different that you're referring to here?
Yeah, I was presuming it was something different. Yeah, because I think with nursing care, you get more funding, and with a care home, you fund yourself if you can.
So here the plan is specifically in relation to your father going into a home?
Yes.
Rather than anything wider than
Yes.
that? Understood. Could you take that down, please? If this conversation was happening December time, was it?
Yeah.
Do you know why there was a delay in moving your dad to a residential home until March?
Because we then was told we had to sort out what sort of care home he would have, if we was going to self-fund or it was going to be council funded. So the social worker gave us a list of homes for me and my sister to go and look at, and we started looking, and we was finding it quite difficult to find one suitable. So then me and my husband went and found Wensley House, and we decided from the social worker, it was a council funded home, we'd put him in there.
Was he funded by the council or was he funded privately when he was in there?
So we decided, because again, you know, it's a lot of information for you to take in. So I decided that we would self-fund. I would sort out the finances.
Understood.
And the social worker turned round, she rang me and said, "Oh, have you found somewhere for your dad?" I said, "Yeah, Wensley House." And then she said, "If I'd have known you was going to self-fund, I'd have backed out long ago."
And how did you feel when you heard that?
I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because I thought she'd be happy that we've got my dad. I'd felt happy that, well, if he's got to go in this home, you know, it's the best that we could have done for him. And then she's telling me if we would have, you know, she'd have known we'd have self-funded, she'd have backed out a long while ago.
I want to ask you now, Jo, about the nature and the extent of the communication between you and staff at St Margaret's. We've touched on this already, but the medical staff there appear often not to have asked you for information about your father. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or when you did provide information, they appear to have ignored it or shut you down or dismissed you. Is that all correct?
Yes.
Did communication and the flow of information at St Margaret's get better after your dad had been there for a while?
No.
I'd like to look at your statement again, please.
Yeah.
Could you put up the statement at page 15, UREP 009924 at paragraph 80, please? Perfect. Just really the first sentence. It did not make sense that they would not listen, in fact the second as well, This was my father's dignity. I was only trying to ease things for him. Does that summarise, in part at least, your feelings about the lack of the communication flow at St Margaret's?
Yeah.
Did you feel that staff had an open mind about what should happen to your dad?
No, because they never spoke to us. All they done was bring my dad out, because obviously it was all locked. They used to bring my dad out to a room, and we used to sit in the room with my dad.
Could you take that down, please? You actually add this a little later on in your statement. You say how you and your family came out of meetings, and this is what you say: feeling confused, and that we'd not been listened to. Our overwhelming impression was that the trust just wanted to get my dad into a home. That's paragraph 73. And that's a point you've already made, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as we'll see, when we come to recommendations, one of them is in relation to staff listening to family members, isn't it?
Did you ever say to them, enough's enough, I'm taking him home tomorrow? Did you ever threaten just to take him away?
I was overwhelmed by it all, as you can imagine. You know, I'd had my mum being ill, and then my mum passing, and then I had to sort my dad out, and then all of a sudden he got ill, and I just went along with it.
Did you feel overwhelmed by them?
Yes, yeah. They just wasn't going to listen, and I mean, really, that's what we should have done. But then if I'd have bought him out, then I wouldn't have I'd have had to go back to the GP. They was telling me one thing, saying he's medically fit. So what was I meant to do?
Thank you.
I just connected to the question that the chair's asked you. Were you ever given any information about how to raise concerns formally at St Margaret's or anywhere?
No.
Whilst at St Margaret's, even if you had been given that information, do you know whether you'd have felt able actually to complain?
No.
Was that for the reasons you've just explained to the chair?
Yeah.
I'm now going to move on, Joe, to the kind of care your dad received at St Margaret's. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You've already said that you're not aware of any care plan.
Yeah.
And if there was one, the family hadn't been involved in its creation. Outside of COVID restrictions, we've heard that you were visiting your dad. Was that quite regular?
Yeah.
So you'd be able to observe him on the ward?
Yeah, we'd go up. No, we wasn't on the ward. We
in the room?
In a room, yeah. We never got to see where he slept. We wasn't allowed on the wards.
You've described the room in your statement. Do you remember what it was like?
Yeah.
You say it was an unpleasant, secure centre.
Yes.
Do you know what kind of activities they did with your father at St Margaret's?
When they rang me, when the health visitor rang me, she said that they'd do they'd have music and like a pub environment. She said, although they wasn't having alcohol, it was like a sing-along. And she said your dad was joining in, which I knew my dad wouldn't be joining in. I mean, he's sitting there asleep because that's what they've said.
You say this in paragraph 26. From my understanding, they would just get my father up, dress him, sit him in a chair and leave him there.
Yeah.
He never went outside.
No.
And we were never given a courtyard or anything to wander around in.
No.
That's correct, is it?
Yeah.
How did your father react to this environment?
It was awful, really. Sad. Yeah.
Could you explain what you mean?
He was just, I don't know. He just wasn't very responsive. I mean, he'd talk to us, but really, he just wanted to come home. He wouldn't make conversation. It was always us trying to make conversation, and then obviously sometimes he'd sit there and be hallucinating.
You say this at paragraph 27. He was hardly communicating. He was horrible for us to see.
Yeah. I mean, I'd just like to add that when me and my sister used to go up and see him, he would be sitting there and all of a sudden he would start hallucinating, saying that he could see animals and all that. And yet, when when we was having a meeting with the doctor, I said he's still hallucinating, and they didn't even know that he was still hallucinating. And then when we went up after that, he'd got a patch on him.
And do you know what that patch was for?
Well, I'm presuming it was to sort of help him keep calm and try and help with these hallucinations that he was having.
It was a form of medication?
It was a form of medication, yeah.
But that's you reading between the lines rather than because you were told?
Yeah.
I'd like to move to your father's physical health as opposed to his mental health.
Yeah.
When he was at St Margaret's, and I'd like to look at another part of your statement, please. Could we put up page 6 at paragraph 29, UREP 009924 at page, paragraph 6, expand 29, thank you. So you say here, we did not feel like his basic needs were being met, such as hygiene and nutrition. So those two very, very basic elements to his physical well-being.
Yeah.
And there was no privacy or dignity afforded to patients. My dad was quite a big man. It was not until he got to Wensley House, the residential home, correct?
Yes.
That we noticed he was like a skeleton.
Yeah.
He'd lost so much weight. My dad's eating had started to deteriorate while he was at home.
Yeah.
While in St Margaret's, they said he had a good appetite.
Yeah.
But when he got to the care home, his false teeth did not fit from where he had lost all the weight.
Yes.
That's quite a graphic image.
It was. Yeah.
Once again, we felt like we could not trust the information provided by the staff. So is everything there in paragraph 29 correct?
Yes.
You've mentioned the concern... Sorry, would you take that down, Amanda? Thank you. You've mentioned the concern that your father may have had bowel cancer.
Yeah.
At least there was that concern. Do you know what staff did about that at St Margaret's?
Nothing, because he said we haven't seen any signs of that here. He said so. The doctor said we haven't seen any signs of that here. So that was it. That was shut down.
You also refer in your statement to finding him with an ulcerated leg.
Yes.
Where his catheter bag had been attached.
Yes.
Had the staff noticed that?
No.
Who noticed it?
My sister.
Did you then, you and your sister, bring it to the staff's attention? Did they in fact then go on to treat it?
Yes.
Were there also occasions, whilst your father was at St Margaret's, that he'd get taken to St Alexandra Hospital?
Yes.
Do you know what that was for?
No, the doctor would ring me and say that your dad had a bad night and he's gone to Princess Alexandra, and that's only the information. But I sort of like presumed it was probably to do with his catheter, because sometimes his catheter could become blocked.
So was this A&E?
Yeah.
Fine. But again, it's you reading between the lines rather than receiving more information.
Yeah.
You've explained that there was no discussion with you about the treatment of your dad's dementia.
Yeah.
And you've said that he continued to hallucinate, and again, trying to work things out maybe after the event.
Yeah.
The patch that was on his arm,
Yes.
you think may have been a form of medication to address that?
Yes.
Were you ever told what medication your father was on?
No.
Did you feel he was being sedated?
Yes.
How empowered did you feel to actually ask questions of the staff about what medication he was on?
I just felt shut down. I mean, like, since obviously I've read his notes, some of the notes again.
So these are the notes that you've received recently?
That I've received, and yet it takes you straight back there to, that you just felt like you wasn't heard. And it was as bad as what I'm saying it was. I mean, I don't know, it's just a strange thing, to be quite honest.
I'd like to talk about, because I think there were occasions when you felt the staff were being insensitive, is that
yes.
right? On one occasion, you talk about a nurse making a comment about things your father had been saying.
Yes.
Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, me and my sister, it'd only just gone in there. It'd gone on there on the Saturday, and we had to go to St Margaret's, take him up some clothes, and she passed comment that my dad had been being a bit suggestive to the nurses. And that's my dad, you taught. And I got a bit upset because that's my dad. And, you know, and my sister said, you know, oh, you know, take no notice and that. But that is part of Louis' body. And she was almost, you know, making a joke of it, which to me, that is not a joke.
So they didn't consider that it might be upsetting to you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You also refer to an occasion where someone from social work, you think, had asked your father to sign a form.
Yes.
At a time when I think he wasn't with family members or friends.
No.
Just to explain a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, my niece, my cousin had gone up there, and she was visiting my dad, and she said that somebody had come in and wanted him to sign some documents, and he turned around and said, no, I'm not signing anything. He said, you need to speak to my daughter. She deals with all that. So my cousin come home and rang me, and I rang them and asked them what the hell was going on, and they was full of apology and said that it shouldn't have happened.
Did you ever get to the bottom of exactly what your father had been asked to sign?
No, I don't know if it was to do with finance. I don't know.
Can we now turn to something else you said in your statement? Can we put up the statement at page 11, paragraph 56? This is UREP 009924. Again, very short. We often tried to get information on how he was, but we never got much feedback. The whole thing was so upsetting to see him in such a state. Does that, again, summarise how you felt? Is there anything else you'd like to say at this stage about your dad's time and care at St Margaret's?
Well, there wasn't any care. He was just left to his own devices, really. They was just doing what they had to do, and that was it.
And when you say what they had to do, what do you mean?
Well, just sort of like doing the bare essentials to, you know, they wasn't really treating my dad as far as I was concerned. It was just like a holding bay for him, really.
A holding bay?
Yeah.
Could you take that down, please? Now, I said I wanted to come on to ask you about treating your dad at home. Can we do that now?
Yep.
You explain in your statement, and we don't need to put this up, it's paragraphs 22 and 23, that we should have had more to do with the way he was admitted and should have been told exactly why he'd been admitted.
Yeah.
If I'd realised what was happening, I could have spoken to my dad's GP. I would have tried to manage him at home, but this option was never considered.
Yeah.
After about 3 weeks at St Margaret's, the occupational therapist called to say my dad had been settling in well, but I did not believe her. My dad was not happy in that environment. The one thing I tried to avoid was having my dad admitted to any hospital. I'd basically given up work so I could keep him at home where he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And in fact, you've already stressed several times he wanted to be at home during your evidence today. If they listened to me, he would never have been admitted. He would have been at home like he wanted. And is that, or do you still feel that way now?
Yeah.
Do you think you'd have been able to manage him at home with his hallucinations?
If we'd have really known what stage he was at, I mean, he had a very good GP, then we probably would. Yeah, because, you know, my dad wasn't an easy man, but I knew my dad, and I would have coped with him at home, because if he was palliative care, I know he would have been where he wanted to be. And I think he'd been hiding a lot of what had been going on.
How would you, could we just address further what the chair asked you? How would you actually have made it work, looking after him at home, a man with dementia?
Because I'd have gone to his GP, which I had a very good relationship with his GP, and I would have done what's needed to be done for my dad. I couldn't have done any more than what I'd done.
This is what you say in paragraph 75 of your statement. If I had a care plan and proper support, I would have been able to care for my dad at home. And then you later say, oh, I wanted him home so I could provide palliative care. So is that what you had in mind? Was that it wouldn't just be you?
No.
There would be a proper plan and
Yeah.
some support
Nurses,
to keep him at home?
Yeah, my sister would have been around, and we would have done what we needed to do.
Is it still clear to you that looking after him at home would have been possible and would have been the best thing for him?
Yeah, because I was doing that. They made me feel like I'd kept my dad a secret, that I shouldn't have had him at home doing all what I was doing.
Joe, I'm going to move on now to Wensley House. Before I do, is there anything else you'd like to say about his time or care at St Margaret's?
No.
So your father is transferred on the 7th of March 2022
Yes.
to Wensley House residential home.
Yep.
Now that's a private care home in Epping, and does that home offer dementia care?
Yeah.
And as you've said, you were able to look around various homes,
Yeah.
and this was the one that you chose.
Yeah.
Now, how well he was there for a short period of time, but how well cared for was he when he was at that care home?
Yeah. He was looked after. Yeah.
I want to ask you about the extent to which St Margaret's had put into place a discharge plan for the move from St Margaret's to the care home or the residential home. What preparation had there been at St Margaret's for this move?
Well, I had to tell the senior nurse where he was going, and then they arranged an ambulance to take him to Wensley House, and that was what was arranged, and that was it. Because we were self-funding, the social worker said that she might pop in and see how we're getting on, but now we're self-funding, that was it, sort of thing. She wouldn't be around, and it was down to us, but nobody from St Margaret's came.
Was there any discharge plan as far as you were aware?
No, he came with no notes. So the nurse at Wensley House asked for the medical notes, and she said they wouldn't give her the medical notes.
Had the nurse ever experienced that before?
No. They both, the care home owner and the nurse said they'd never experienced a patient coming with no notes. But because we'd sort of arranged it, and they could see the situation that I was in with my dad, they took him because it had been arranged by me, really.
You say this at paragraph 64. I had to tell the care home what his needs were.
Yeah.
They had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You've already touched on his physical condition by the time he got here to the home.
Yeah.
You referred to him being like a skeleton, I think. You add this at paragraph 62. And I'm sorry that this is difficult, but do you mind if I mention what you said there?
Yeah.
You say his legs and feet were swollen.
That's right.
He had a blocked catheter.
That's it.
The pain, you say, must have been excruciating.
Yes.
And then you add this. The whole experience must have been horrendous.
Yeah.
He seemed to give up.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
He was trying to pass away, yeah.
And in fact, on the 15th of March 2022, did your father die at Wensley House?
Yes.
Were you and your sister there with him when he died?
Yeah. A week later.
In fact, you say you'd been with him for a number of days straight.
Yeah, because the care home nurse, head nurse, she rang me, and she said, you need to come up. She said, your dad, there's something different with your dad. So when me and my sister got up there, he was just sort of like laid out in the bed, a skeleton, and that's when his body was absolutely awful, and they was trying to give him water, and he was refusing. He'd had enough, and from that day we stayed with him until he passed away.
And you say in your statement that in the final days of his life,
Yes.
the doctor agreed with you that he should finally be in palliative care.
Yes, that the head nurse agreed. She said enough is enough, and they got palliative care for my dad.
You say that the cause of death was late-stage dementia and
Yes.
old age on the death certificate.
Yeah.
And there was no inquest in your dad's case.
No.
Jo, I'm going to turn next to recommendations. Before I do, is there anything more you'd like to add about anything we've covered so far?
No.
Okay. Could we turn then, and we'll put them up on the screen so we can look at them and discuss them in that way. Could you put up, please, the statement at page 17, UREP 009924, and expand to paragraph 96, please? My main recommendation for change is that the family need to be heard.
Yeah.
When my dad was initially taken to Whipps Cross, they should have spoken to my sister and me to get more information. There should have been involvement of me as his carer and his local GP.
Yeah.
Now, this is clearly informed by all of the information you've already given us today, is that right?
Yeah.
Is there anything more you'd like to say about this recommendation
No.
now? There's one thing I'd like to ask you, if I may.
Yeah.
Your dad was 90.
Yes.
Do you think that the attitude that was shown to you and possibly to him was anything to do with his age?
Possibly, yeah.
Can you
Because he was 90, and he should really just be in a care home now. But like I said, that's not what he wanted, and that's not what we wanted. He'd been in his own property for 60 years. He'd never go away. He'd never go anywhere, and that was his dying wish, to be at home and to be passed away at home.
Do you think a younger person might have been listened to a little bit more?
Probably, yeah.
Can we go over the page, please? Would you expand paragraphs 97 to 99? So secondly, 97, my dad was not assessed properly. The assessment came to the wrong conclusion. It was all rushed through and not thought about. In particular, no one considered that a dying man in his 90s had been at his home for 60 years. This is a point you've made, isn't it?
Yeah.
For him not to die there was a big thing. The doctors recognised that he was more ill than they first thought, but they did not seek the right information and made the wrong decision in admitting him. He had mental health symptoms, but he had never had mental health issues before. His presentation fit with LBD, that's Lewy body's dementia, as identified by the first doctor. Mental health was not the right place for him. So, in your view, this is a case where there was an assessment that wrongly led to admission.
Yes.
He should not have been admitted, and he should have been kept at home and cared for there.
Yes.
Is there anything more about paragraph 97 and assessment that you'd like to say now?
No, I suppose if they'd have just been more thorough with the assessment and listened to what we'd said and asked, has your dad had any other mental health issues, which he'd never, then maybe we'd have come to a quicker conclusion and he wouldn't have been left in there for as long as what he was, and he'd have got the correct care that he needed.
Paragraph 98, you say there was a significant lack of information. We had never been in this situation before, and we did not know what to do. And that's sort of picking up on what you said to the chair, isn't it?
Yeah.
We did not know what we didn't know. We thought the trust were doing their best, but now we question who for.
Yes.
Again, does this very much relate to your experience with your dad and the failure to give the family the information you needed about your dad?
Yeah.
Is there anything more you'd like to say about that point?
Yeah. And the social worker, I thought she was, supposed to be helping us. And because I was self-funding, she said she'd have backed out. But what is that supposed to mean? That you're just sort of like thinking of the money that they can get? Because that's the view I took.
So you were concerned about the motivation?
Yes, yeah.
You go on to say this at paragraph 99. Finally, there needs to be better clarity about diagnosis. In my father's case, there was confusion over whether he had LBD or vascular dementia, and for some reason, no one wanted to make a proper diagnosis. So that's the final recommendation there about diagnosis. Two different dementia diagnoses, and they never got to the bottom of that particular issue.
Yeah.
Is there anything more you'd like to say about diagnosis and what you say there?
All we was sort of like led to believe is that Lewy body is is hard to diagnose, and it means more of an expensive scan and more time. I mean, the symptoms are the same, but when my dad was diagnosed with Lewy body, he had all the symptoms of Lewy body, and it made sense.
So is your concern that maybe they didn't want to go to the expense of the scan?
Yeah, it was easier to say vascular dementia rather than Lewy body dementia.
I understand. Chair, those are the questions I have for Joe at this stage. Do you have any questions?
No, I've got no more questions. Thank you very much.
Joe, we're going to move on to look at some photos in a moment.
Oh, right.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No.
Okay. Amanda, would you mind putting the photos up?
You're very like him.
Yeah.
Is that your mum with your dad?
No, that's his sister.
That's his sister?
Yeah. That's my dad and my mum with my sister.
With your older sister?
Yeah, my sister.
They look very proud.
Yeah. That's my dad with me and my sister.
On holiday.
That's the only other holiday he went on. Then he couldn't wait to get home.
Where was it? Where was it?
That was in Norfolk.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Those are the photos.
Those are lovely, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah. Wonderful.
We're going to pause, Joe, just to see if there are some further questions.
Okay.
If there are none, this is the end of your
Okay.
evidence. May I thank you?
Okay.
And I'd like to thank you too very much indeed.
Fine,
It's
thank
really
you.
helpful to us to
Okay.
have your evidence. Thank you.